Yeah, and the second time D2 Hustlers are deciding to go for this route. It's a very stable route. Again, having Pango versus Mars, you're never going to say no to that. Pango versus Bane is a little bit more interesting. I know a lot of players wouldn't willingly do that to themselves. And of course, you're going up versus Flea, the only man in North America who wants to actively play Grimstroke every single game he can. So I'll have to see if that's the option they end up going for. Of course, with Barana and Nyx out, those are Flea's other best heroes. So I can definitely see them going for a reach. Double grip isn't too shabby either.
Hmm.
Snapfire. Okay. Snapfire Void.
Okay. Yep. Makes a lot more sense now. That is a combo we saw to the point of it just kind of almost getting annoying at a certain point in previous patches where you just drop the chrono, you drop the kisses on top of it, and whoever's inside doesn't really get to have a fun time. And D2 Hustlers, this lineup has no save if that combo play actually comes out against them, really. The Dawnbreaker, if you're jumping into a chronosphere, is in a weird spot alongside whoever she's trying to save.
Yeah, it looks really weird as well because when she gets frozen, she's stuck at like the top of the chrono. You can see her legs dangling up in the skybox. It's a very strange interaction. But typically with this Faceless Void, at least way back when, it was whenever the Snapfire was in the position 5 role. Of course, that's when Little Shredder was just by and large the most broken spell in the game. And I was going to mention, when you pick a Void like this, Wraith King is still in the pool if they really want to go for it. It does feel like a very old draft. Both of these matchups are very reminiscent of much, much earlier patches. Of course, not really that much has changed in the large scheme of things, but there is still going to be the Snapfire walking around with Faceless Void around that 10-minute mark, looking for your free Chrono Snapfire kill. But that's where I wonder if maybe the new Pango on the block, the new Dawnbreaker, are a little bit too tanky for some of these heroes to kill. And as bad as that jump into the Chrono actually is, you do get the healing from the Dawnbreaker in the Chronosphere. Will this Dawnbreaker purposely put herself into that Chrono? That's a different question. In addition to that, will this be an offlane Dawnbreaker, an offlane Pango? Monster, I know he's played both many, many times. It's just with this D2 Hustlers lineup, typically we see Devi Lama actually ending up on that Pangolier. So it is going to be interesting to see what kind of lane they actually go for. And then talking about the Snapfire a little bit, it is going to most likely be a Flea Snapfire. Maybe you could say it would be a mid Snapfire in a different patch of Dota, but I think more or less this is guaranteed to be his hero. And then you're going to have a lot less of that guaranteed lockdown. Everything is really coming from this Voids game.
Mm-hmm. A lot of the initiation is going to sort of fall to him. Maybe if the Mars can grab something like a Blink Dagger in a good timing, then some of that responsibility gets shifted away, but still very much going to be reliant on Sammy to sort of hit the mark there if they really want to definitively win those fights. So we'll see what they can do as we get into the last of the picks. D2 Hustlers keyed in on that middle lane. TEAMTEAM, though, you take a look at their bans. They're still not 100% sure. The Dawnbreaker and the Pango are maybe giving them a little bit of pause in terms of who's going where. So they kind of split those bans a bit. Kunkka and Tide, obviously both good choices to ban out, but they can't really nail down one position left while they at least get the Leshrac for themselves.
Yep. Easy hero pick to choose. Of course, D2 Hustlers, they ban out the two Realia Classics, arguably his best heroes, despite the meta. But Leshrac, it's very safe, it's very stable, and it doesn't lose mid, which is incredibly important for a team like D2 Hustlers. And I think the reason you see the split bans coming out from TEAMTEAM is because that Pango has also been run in Mr. Gene's hands in a wide variety of games. So now I think they pick this Leshrac knowing that if it is going mid, Realia should have a relatively free time. I would say even a really good time. And that definitely gives D2 Hustlers still a vast, really array of options, but it does make us guess their hero up until the last pick. And that's incredibly important when you have last pick. That's why we see every single team value it so much, because you can clear the board with this final pick. And that's a board clear. That's Pugna. Okay.
Not a hero that sees a whole lot of love in the sort of current meta, but I don't know. Pugna is always just fun to watch. To
Thanks,
play
guys.
against
Thanks a lot.
no, let's not even go there. But from the spectating standpoint, Pugna always seems to bring a little something to the table. You always have that tug of war with his life drain, so the D2 Hustler's picking it up for Mr. Jeans, and that is your potentially magic damage hero to complement the physical damage from Yuma's Wraith King.
Yeah, and there is some interesting tech now with Pugna. Of course, it was changed very briefly in 730, where now Nether Ward doesn't reduce your mana regeneration. The annoying aspect of this spell was removed. But whenever you cast a spell, it gives it HP. It gives you 2 hits for every spell that's cast while it's actually placed. So that means that the team fight execution from Team Team actually needs to be pretty tight. You've got some big ultimates and some pretty low mana pools on a lot of your heroes here. So if you actually get stuck in a fight where this Nether Ward is actually beaming everyone, at the same time, Leshrac is a hero that triggers it every single time a spell gets cast. So it's going to feel definitely a little bit difficult to get in these fights where D2 Hustlers actually get set up. In addition to that, you're playing again versus Pango. You have to be so careful. You can start the fight off getting a grip on top of him, or even waiting for the roll to happen, getting the grip, and then trying to right click him down. That's where I think Team Team might be looking for a slightly slower timing, where D2 Hustlers, they've definitely got the run at you heroes right now.
Yeah, D2 Hustlers with something that just feels a little more aggressively oriented, as you said, more of the sort of run at you strategy, as we have the early smoke play out from D2 Hustlers. Not sure if this is going to lead them into a fight or if they're just looking to push out for the ward. Yeah, okay. Mr. Jeans will put the ward down, and now Ryoya, that's not where you want to be. Hit up by the stun right away. Follow-up stun out from Divine Llama. They're going to be able to find that kill. And Mr. Jeans, the one to snag it at the end there as well. So you get the kill. You take down that opposing mid laner. You get extra money into the hands of the Pugna, who's just about at the bottle before we even hear the horn. And, well, sometimes that move is a little bit too easy to predict, especially the Leshrac, more than quite a few other heroes, tends to be the one to sort of make that push up the ramp.
Yeah, you think you're faster than your opponents, but D2 Hustlers are a little bit too good with the heads-up play, and they've got quite a few more stuns than you actually have level 1. I don't think any hero wants to get their stun level 1 right now on the Team side. Maybe you could say Ryoya does, but it actually doesn't matter. And Devi might actually make the call on this observer right here.
Boys, are we doing this right now? There is some smack being talked in the all chat before we even get the game started. Just be careful. We had an instance earlier on in this event where that trash talk got taken maybe a step further. The BM pause that resulted in the penalty being applied. So, there's always a little room for some chirping, right? But just be cautious. You don't ever want to be the guy who gets that penalty. Oh god.
Who's the animal? But yeah, it's all in good jest, I'm sure. But that's where you do have this Pugna hero. That's interesting. So I can definitely see the smack being laid down. Of course, with players playing across a wide variety of regions, there's always going to be some playing.
Meanwhile, Yudomi trying to go to work early on that Pangolier, going in with the shield crash, just looking to dish out that little bit of early damage, but I don't know. Braxton Flea, this feels like a situation where they're going to be able to trade out just as well, if not better, in a lot of these situations. Yudomi, sure, you can get in. The shield crash does some damage and applies that slow, but if you're not careful, the nuke damage from the scatter blast could lead you into some trouble. You get hit up by that spear once Brax hits 2, and really that's the only target in this lane that Team Team can go for. Yuma is kind of a no-go right now, so we'll see what Yudomi can do, but he's going to have to also play it cool and not overextend in this lane.
Yeah, and unfortunately, Flea is one of those new heroes. Of course, Stamper has been in it for a while, but still feels relatively new in the long scheme of things, but is very efficient when it comes to trading with a lot of these melee heroes, so Yudomi really should have the worst time in this lane, and Flea even doing a nice play there.
Sammy,
Sure that
Sammy,
blocked. Yeah.
He's dead? No, he's not. The fairy fire. Oh boy, living life on the edge there, Sammy boy, but that is quite the combo. They start things off with that Earth Spike that leads Monster into the Starbreaker, and then they have the Hex to follow it up, and at that point he had already sort of used the Time Walk, so if it weren't for that Fairy Fire, he very, easily could have been finished off.
Yeah, and that's something where it's the inexperience playing versus the Dawnbreaker. Of course, everybody knows that once she's level 2, she's going to try and make some crazy play on you. Same with Lion, but when you actually look at the numbers, it will definitely catch a lot of people off guard, especially now that you're in the 3 role. Those levels are going to be coming out so much faster, and that's where a player like Monster, who definitely picks up the new heroes incredibly quickly, is going to look to make those very early punishes.
Meanwhile, back up top, Flea and Yudomi were having themselves a bit of a duel. It's one that I'm not really sure we can call a winner on that. Flea was able to heal up with the salve, but while he gets away and heals up, the pull was successful from that D2 Hustlers, or partially successful, actually. They didn't quite manage to get it all, so they've got the double ranged creep here. But for the most part, they're doing what they want. Got to assume that Yuma's just going to sit here and take what farm he can get, so D2 Hustlers looking all right on that front, and kind of interesting. Outside of that First Blood play with the Leshrac just going a bit too far over, we haven't seen too much more outside of this bottom lane. Devi and Monster are obviously going to continue looking, as you mentioned, especially since I believe Monster, he just,
Ooh,
yeah,
Flea.
he's got the Soul Ring finished off. Meanwhile, yeah, up top, Flea, well, a little bit of danger, but Yudomi's just got to pass all the way through on that one, including taking a couple of tower shots, but he should be okay. I don't think Flea has the kill potential here. Oh, hold on. Not by himself. Maybe if Ryoya can get over in time. He's got the Lightning Storm. And they do get it. They need maybe one hit on the scatter, but they're not able to make the connection. Good swashbuckle from Yudomi as he gets away with about 11 HP there. So, well, seals the bounty, gets away with his life. He's got to spend a lot of time now away from this lane, but honestly, eh. Yuma's fine, you know, he's a big kid. He can hold his own here in the 1v2. You already see him just falling back to the tower.
And honestly, he would be under a lot more pressure, but he had a nice cheeky pull there, so actually getting the creep wave decently far back. But of course, at the same time, Team with free range over really all of the camps, they can just drag everything into each other. So even though it's a nice play, I don't think it'll net Yuma really any more net worth, because he still has to be very cautious of the magic damage coming out from this top lane.
Yeah, Yudomi's back in the lane, though, to help out now, so Brax and Flea will sort of think twice before really doing too much, and this is a little bit of kind of what I was saying before. Outside of that bottom lane, we haven't seen too much aggression. Brax and Flea, they haven't really gone for it, which I mentioned earlier, they're probably not going to go on the Wraith King in most circumstances, but they haven't really put too much onto Yudomi either, outside of that sort of forced exodus where he was able to get around and steal the bounty rune. As IX Mike taken out in the Southside jungle, Monster and Devi, pretty much the same maneuver that they put onto the Faceless Void a few minutes ago, but, I mean, that's Sammy on Faceless Void as opposed to IX Mike, who has very little to keep himself safe there. So D2 Hustlers are able to find that kill, and well, at this point, I don't know if you're going to put direct pressure onto Sammy, but moves like that could get them going. Devi at this point, at level 3, might start looking to make rotations out of the bottom lane as well.
Yeah, they got to be very careful here.
Okay.
Nice dodge from Sammy. It's very hard for them to ever kill this Faceless Void, of course, having the time lock. He's gone for a little bit of a crazy build here on Sammy. He's got the 1-1-3 going right now, so he's really heavy into that time lock if he does ever find that punish really specifically onto the Lion. I don't think he can ever take out the Dawnbreaker. She's just a little bit too tanky to actually finish off. That's where we might need to see a later rotation from Ryoya, but that's where Ryoya has the most interesting game, I think, on his team. He's the one who's going to make those rotations on those towers. The only problem is you're playing versus a Pugna. Anytime you leave this lane, you need to leave someone in your stead. Otherwise, you are going to lose your tower to the Pugna Blast, and there's not much you can do about it. It's also very obnoxious for Ryoya to exist here. Of course, there isn't that negative mana regen aspect of Plague Ward, or rather Nether Ward anymore, so it's much less pressing to actually kill it in lane, but it just means that you're not able to nuke out these waves. Mr. Jeans always has a creep wave exactly where he wants it.
And now Yudomi getting wrapped on here. The spear will come through. He has enough mana for the swashbuckle if he can get away, but the stun lock is there. Brax starts it off. They get the cookie in for the follow-up stun, and Team able to make it happen. They get their first kill. While that was happening, it was unfortunate for D2 Hustlers. They had brought in the Lion all the way around. This Obs Ward scouted out the movement, though, so instead, well, Devi will simply strike elsewhere. Makes his way down bot, and he and Monster again combine for that kill onto Mike.
Yeah, he is the easiest target right now on the map for them. They can't really do much mid, of course. Like you said, they made or wanted to make that attempt, but it's very, very difficult to ever make a play on this Leshrac. He's deceptively tanky. In addition to that, I think he's never really had more than an empty bottle. He's always had quite a lot of regen pumped into him. Nobody's really making a lot of contests for either the bounty runes or the real runes, so it's not like anyone is making crazy plays here. But that's where both of these hyper tower pushers, they need to be very careful. They have to mirror each other pretty closely, otherwise, well, Mr. Jeans.
Stunned up. There's going to be that Guardian coming in, though, so Monster wants into the fight, and with Devi there as well, this duo, Monster and Devi, every single play that D2 Hustlers have made so far has really sprung from one or both of them, so they make that rotation, and it did look like Mr. Jeans was in trouble at first. That was a good cookie play from the Snapfire. The problem is, the reinforcements are there too fast, and Ryoya very wisely decides to back off rather than just get sort of mired in a 2v3.
Yep, and that's the power of the hero. You have to be so careful of your jumps, and on Team, unfortunately, you do not have the greatest burst damage. You really need to work for all of your kills, and it's a nice sleep onto Devi bottom, but okay, they got to work for this a little bit harder, and Mike is getting turned on again.
Chrono from Sammy, it's there. He's not going to use it yet, though, but he already lost half his HP, and now he's disarmed by the Decrep. That's brutal. Devi, can he survive? No, he can't. The problem is, for Sammy, he's not getting out of that one either. He unfortunately got the wrong timing there. If the Chrono's a little bit earlier, maybe it hits up Mr. Jeans before the Decrepify comes through, but once it's applied, so much of that duration just gets kind of wasted.
Yeah, and that's for Decrepify. It's such an annoying skill. Of course, only the cooldown scales, so it just matters that the Decrepify got off in the first place. And that's where we get to see our first tier 1 get heavily pressured by these heroes. Meanwhile, Ryoya, who was able to finish off his hood at the very least, and I believe farm up a pretty nice large stack, hasn't been able to put that same pressure on. And you don't even see him trying to go for the Edict on the mid tower, because he's scared of those very heavy TP rotations. That's something that Hustlers are really good at. All of their TP rotations, their counterplays are very solid. Yudomi does die, though. Yeah.
Good two-man game from Brax and Mike, though. That Nightmare into the Spirit combo, that is going to be there pretty consistently. So if they can continue to take advantage of openings like that, that's at least going to net some of those smaller kills. But as you were sort of emphasizing, that tower bot, it gets taken down. So yeah, the Pangolier dies, but Yudomi is not really worth a lot, and you actually see the second he respawns, he's back up top. He's going to go for the Rolling Thunder, just trying to defend this tower, even if it's by himself. But honestly, yeah, if he can keep them locked down long enough, here come the reinforcements. Monster's in, the stun will be applied from the Solar Guardian, and even with the invis, they just see Ryoya. They are right on top of him with that stun from Yuma. As Ryoya will fall, Brax does get the arena off into the spear, but he's immediately hexed by Devi, getting slowed up now. And I'm not sure he makes it out of here. Mr. Jeans actually doesn't get the life drain kill, but Brax is still on the run. Nice play from Devi. Throws out the Earth Spike into the trees. And we'll be able to lock it down. That allows Yuma to get both of the kills, I believe, in that fight. And now they're onto another tower.
Yeah, that is so ridiculously well played from both Monster and Yudomi. Monster starts the cast on the actual Rolling Thunder hit, so he doesn't follow the Pango through the roll. It's on the cast point where the hero previously was, so it's just fantastic mechanical skill coming from them. And it totally caught Ryoya off guard, and that's the inexperience. Playing versus Dawnbreaker, you try to make these plays that should feel very comfortable to you, but that's where a hero that can globally teleport across the map is always going to throw a wrench into the competitive scene. It just makes you play completely differently.
Just feels so weird using the words Ryoya and inexperience in the same sentence. But yeah, it's in the context. How much do you know about playing against the Dawnbreaker in professional games? You know, in pubs, it's a similar story, but never quite the same atmosphere. And yeah, Ryoya that time just gets kind of baited into it. But now you see this again. This group up for TEAMTEAM, there's such a stark contrast right now in terms of some of these first couple of objectives. D2 Hustlers got that tier 1 down bot quite a while ago, and not easily, but much more methodically than Team, who are going after this 2, 3, 4 times to try and claim this tower, and they still haven't gotten it.
Yep, and that's where the strongest strength of this Dawnbreaker, at least early on, is her ability to constantly push in those waves. And
He's going.
okay,
TP's coming in. Dawnbreaker will be dropping right on Mike's head. Nice Nightmare, though, to avoid the initial stun, but still going to get locked down and finished off. Mr. Jeans gets the kill from the tree line, and now Flea is getting pushed back by that life drain. Doesn't look like D2 Hustlers are going to go much further than that. The play was find a pick, protect the tower, and they do both.
yep,
Is he
and
stuck?
exact same play again. Yeah, he gets freed. It's just so easy for them. It's so difficult for Relay to ever get on top of these buildings. That was with an arcane room too, where you get to pop your first edict for the glyph, and then you get to pop the second one to actually try and claim it. And yeah, they're bringing absolutely everyone up here. Sammy Boy might not, or might even want to come here. I think he's going to stop showing on the wave. Oh, and he's drawing a line, at least on the minimap, saying that he wants to make a rotation, but they need to be so careful, and they're throwing the kisses at Yudomi, but
is this? Okay.
this is all just to get the tower. This is so unlucky.
I mean, they do push Yudomi off the tower. He has been the most consistent defender of that tier 1, so this may be that moment. But Monster trying to actually get himself further into the tree line, but the Fiend's Grip is going to lock him down. They should get the kill. Ryoya, meanwhile, did go for that tower first, so they get that. They double back for the pickoff, and, well, I mean, multiple tries, and really want to emphasize multiple tries to get that tower, but eventually they've got it. They found the pickoff, and you didn't need to bring Sammy away from those farming opportunities in the middle lane.
Yep, that is the biggest win. Unfortunately, it will feel a little bit disconnected until we have those kisses back up. It makes it so much more difficult for Sammy Boy to find those easy chrono kills, and that's where you are going to see a 4v5 play out if D2 Hustlers want to go for it. And it's an unfortunate top monster isn't able to go, but oh, Mike
is dancing, but, well, not quite well enough. Able to avoid the first hit, but with Defiant and Mr. Jeans there's only so many options for him, so quick kill, going the way of D2 Hustlers. I believe they got the D ward down up on that eye spot as well, so taking away that vision. And now you've got your Solar Guardian back up. So Monster obviously is going to be farming for the time being, but if they look for the fight, he is going to be able to join in. Although, really right now, who initiates that fight? The Rolling Thunder was just used, so Yudomi doesn't really have that, and the cores for the most part are kind of minding their business right now. It's much more of a farm-oriented style for them. Outside of those situations where the supports kind of just hand-deliver them an opportunity.
Yeah, and that's where making a play onto this mid tower is really unlikely. Unless D2 Hustlers find a crazy smoke pickoff, maybe in Team's jungle, they can try and really snowball that into the mid tower push, but that's where both of these teams are going to try really hard to make these plays. You have a Blink Dagger finished on Brax. The Mars might be able to find that Pugna in the backline. The problem is they need to hit the pecking order really nicely on Team. If they misuse their spells and they're able to weasel themselves out and play for these really long engagements, there's so much healing on the D2 Hustle side. There's so much negative damage coming out. Everybody just takes such a long time to kill if those spells actually get off.
The Monster, meanwhile, just finished off the Echo Saber. You see him queuing up the Deso as his next item.
Oh, Sammy?
So, heavy emphasis on the damage. Speaking of damage, Sammy's going to get hit up. Can he actually get anything out here in time? Well, he can with the Nightmare, or maybe he can't. He's just stunned up again. And Sammy will be taken down, but look at Ryoya going in, looking for that revenge, dropping multiple heroes low. They're only going to get one, though, as Yudomi is the one to fall. Or, excuse me, I say only get one. They did get the Lion right at the very outset of that fight, so it's going to be 2 for Flea, in fact, but, well, that could have been a much cleaner and better fight had that Faceless Void not just been locked down. He's hexed, he's stunned, he's just completely unable to contribute to that engagement.
Yeah, it was definitely a little bit sloppy there. I really think that Brax had it covered, but he was so afraid of not getting his Chronosphere off. If he gets the Chrono off, that fight looks completely different. The Pango doesn't get to do nearly as much, and Mike isn't forced to grip him, but instead that fight definitely gets a little bit sloppy, and you do lose the Faceless Void. Fortunately, didn't use the Chrono, so you will get to see him play to a little bit more. don't think he's going to Chrono Divide either. It should just be a relatively free kill. But that's where getting on the Pugna is so key. They can't just sit around taking that Nether Ward damage forever. And there's a full Octarine on Mr. Jeans as well. So every single spell is going to be on the other side of the river, more or less. So they really need to take this aggression in stride. Otherwise, this Pugna could definitely start to walk away with this game.
And you see the Pugna now queuing up a Blink Dagger afterwards. So we talked about Team needing to try to get on top of him. That's going to be much more difficult once he can finish that item off. So we'll see if Team try to pull the trigger anytime soon. Ryoya is currently farming, but finished off with Kaya and Sanj. So, well, he's got that sort of build that's going to get him into the middle of that fight. You see, queuing up next, Boots of Travel into the BKB. So he knows, realistically, you're the Lesh. You have to just stand right in the middle of everyone to try and get some of that damage out. And durability is the call for him for now. Meanwhile, haven't really done too much talking about Yuma. 1-0-3. It's been relatively quiet for him, but that's not a good thing if you're Team. If the Wraith King is being quiet, it means he's off farming. Well, first the armlet. Now I believe his Radiance is actually done. That's, yeah, the recipe coming out to him.
Yeah, it's an incredibly fast Radiance, and fortunately for Team, they are pretty split up in the magic damage, so this Radiance isn't going to cause them too many issues, but the bigger problem is the item that comes after it. He's just going to go for the Blink Dagger and then just runs at their opponents. And then what do? You have to ignore him for such a long amount of time. The issue becomes we can't chrono him on his first life, so we need to wait, or we need to choose different targets with the Faceless Void and then play around that later timing. Well, they found Monster top.
Onto Monster. Where's the damage, though? They actually haven't found the kill. There we go. Spear comes out. That should do it. Okay, not quite yet. There it is. Ryoya comes in to help out. Mike's the one to get killed. That does come at a cost, though. Yuma and the rest of the D2 Hustlers lineup got in on to flee, but Core 4 support trade, and now that smoke rotation that Hustlers were hoping for gets kind of broken up. They ran into one, but running directly into that Snapfire will allow the rest of the lineup, including those all-important cores, to now make their escape.
Yeah. This is something that Team is really good at. They always try to leave one person behind, so that way they could kill any aggression coming out on their buildings. That's why Brax is just a statue right now. Doesn't need to be this wave. It can always be the next one. And you see, as the Wraith King leaves as well, he knows that this top lane is going to be completely safe and a lot of time for him to look towards that BKB, another really key item for him.
Trying to be as efficient as possible, but now the TP comes Chrono onto 3. There's going to be the kisses to follow it up. They've taken down Divide. Monster dead as well. And Yuma is all alone. His reinforcements are all the way in the river, so no one is coming to save him. Reincarnation gets popped, but that's irrelevant. They just blow him up a second time, and that is the fight Team have needed this entire game. We finally see that Chrono deployed in that perfect position to then get the follow-up with the kisses, and D2 Hustlers, I mean, they were playing well, but their heroes at this stage in the game, 20 minutes in, you do not survive that combo.
Ooh. Flea is so fast with that blink. Once he has that Aghanim Shard, he's going to be an absolute monster, but that's where D2 Hustlers are struggling to find the fights that they actually want to take. They want to take these long fights where the Solar Guardian gets cast on a hero that's actually under threat of dying, or maybe you started off by trying to perma-stun one hero to death with the finger. I think they just haven't been able to get that setup that they actually want in these engagements, and really Team have done a fantastic job of defending their buildings going forward. Of course, you had to concede the mid tower. It's just a little bit too hard to hold versus that Octarine Core Pugna, but everywhere else, the objectives have been really difficult for Hustlers to take, and that's where they can force their opponents to find those fights. And unfortunately for them, they're not making an aggressive move really at all. This is just allowing time to Sammy Boy, who is going to have his chrono in another 60 seconds here.
Oh, Brax, okay.
This doesn't feel good.
The reincarnation's not up yet, so they're just going straight in onto Yuma. They've got him. TPs are too late. Yodomi, though, he's going to look for revenge. Rolling Thunder gets him in onto the Leshrac, trying to turn around as best as he can. Meanwhile, further to the north, it's Brax who's going to get taken down, as Mr. Jeans will find that kill, but that is a big setback. Yuma doesn't have that safety. It's only level 1. Well, it's level 2 now, but it's just not up in time for him to avoid the follow-up. And Normally on the Wraith King, you just don't have to worry about that, but he shows himself in top that little bit too long, and you mentioned earlier we weren't seeing a lot of aggression out from D2 Hustlers. If you wait too long, then your opponents are not just going to sit back forever. They're going to start making some moves of their own, as we saw just then.
Yeah, and that's where Chrono up in 15 seconds. Sammy Boy has the really good talents on Faceless Void right now. That level 20 is really the big power spike, though, where you get to choose, most people do choose the 120 attack speed during Chronosphere, and it feels like you have a pocketed Mjolnir. It feels like you have that Hyperstone, 4,000 gold item in the backpack during the only time that you're really going to have an opportunity to hit heroes. And unfortunately, this top lane is just continuing to be unfortunate for D2 Hustlers. They've gone up here 2 or 3 times as 5 and are unable to find the one sole hero pushing out those lanes. And that's where Team are just continuously successful. It's where their cores are really starting to pull ahead. Of course, Brax is struggling a little bit to stay in that top echelon when it comes to the cores, but that's just because a lot of that farm does get soaked up by Flea. It's just the way they like to run their lanes.
Yeah, and honestly, Brax can still have an impact with what he's got, right? The Blink Dagger working his way towards a BKB. So item-wise, he doesn't need as much to maintain effectiveness, whereas Flea, if he starts building up, he really does turn into a rather sizable problem for that D2 Hustlers lineup. For D2 Hustlers, though, we do see the Deso now picked up on Monsters, so that damage output takes a rather sizable tick upwards for him, and you actually see him moving his way over, looking to take a bit of a stacked camp here on the Ancients. So we mentioned maybe the farming priority being spread out for Team. For D2 Hustlers, it's in a similar position. It's just the Dawnbreaker who's getting that priority right now.
Yeah, the only unfortunate thing for Monster right now is he hasn't been able to get those long fights in actually a whiffed arena mid.
Yagomi, though, is cut off from his teammates. And yeah,
Grip.
There's going to be the Fiend's Grip, but Monster's jumping in, and Mike is going to be sacrificed, taken down, but now they want Ryoya. They get the slow down. There's going to be Monster going in with that convergence on the Celestial Hammer, and Ryoya is stunned up, but look at Sammy, tries to go in for the Chrono, and now Yuma, okay, he just keeps on going. Chrono misses, so he just charges ahead. Ryoya will fall, and Sammy by himself did not feel comfortable going all the way in, especially knowing that his Leshrac was getting picked off on the other side, so he has to back away. And that Chrono, honestly, does really just as much good as the arena, which is to say, not a whole lot.
Yeah, it was a really good spread from D2 Hustlers. All of them split up as soon as they see Sammy Boy go in, so he only ends up clipping the hero with an Aeon Disc, so that is just a really unfortunate timing. Losing Ryoya as well, that was the fight that they weren't able to get for quite a long time. Unfortunately, that's the patience that Mike didn't really hold on to. He felt like he needed to grip that Pango to stop that roll from coming through. But this is where you give up 1 or 2 fights with your big, long cooldowns, and then suddenly, now there's going to be an Aegis, most likely on Mr. Jeans. You have to Chrono this Pugnet twice, and Aegis really is the objective that starts to break the Faceless Void. Or, okay, you give it to Yuma. Okay, the man's got 3 lives.
That was weird.
Can't
Mr.
disagree
Jeans,
with that.
He made space for it, like he was going to grab it, so he's got a wand and a bottle in his backpack right now. Hopefully something gets shifted over there soon, but yeah. 3 lives for Yuma in this next fight, which presumably means Yuma is going to obviously still farm, but maybe be a little bit less farming focused. He's got the Blink Dagger up and running, so you really want him in the middle of those fights, taking advantage of the 2 to 3 lives that he'll have at his disposal. And, oh, Devi missing with the first stun, but the Hex is there. They're going to be able to get the Sun on the Bane from Yuma, and that crit, that's not fair. IX Mike with no chance to get away as Yuma takes him down, and D2 Hustlers could look to get a push going in this bottom lane. It's a long way to that tier 2 tower, but there's not a lot standing in their path right now.
Yeah, and that's where, while D2 Hustlers have been struggling to get on top of some of these objectives for maybe the past 10 minutes, this mid-tier 1 tower still stands. Ryoya has been even more scared of getting active on these buildings. He has a full BKB now, so he's not going to need to be afraid of too much. But that's where the endless push is going to start coming from D2 Hustlers. The skeletons are able to tank the glyph, and now that the glyph has already been committed, they can play the map completely differently. They can force their opponents back pretty much whenever they want to, and that's where Team have to be really careful when they make these calls, because they've been in positions like this before. Once they commit their glyph, they play on the back foot a little bit. If they don't appraise what they actually need to bring to these fights, they just start falling behind on every single core. And Faceless Void, a core that's so important with his items, you don't want to be forced into your base, stuck on the high ground, and he's about to hit level 22, so that's the danger moment. This is where this Faceless Void can actually start solo killing people.
Yeah, once he has that buff up, he is going to hit for quite a bit more than he previously was, assuming he does find those chrono targets. But for right now, Sammy's going to be running into Divide. Divide hits him up with the Hex into the Earth Spike. Needs to wait for the reinforcements, though, as Yodomi is coming in. They're going to try and make this happen, and Sammy, I mean, he may just have to, yeah, try and get himself out of here, but the TP will be canceled, and now he is completely away from his backup. That is the sort of risk that you take. They thought he can just jump away. He'll move into the tree line and TP out, but by doing that, you're too far away from Flea and Mike when you get caught. And that one should not have been that easy, but that's the risk that they took.
It's a really unfortunate buildup coming from Sammy Boy as well. He bought the Crystallis after the Sanjin Yasha because every carry buys in this certain way if you want to make that play for Roche, but the decision from D2 Hustlers to take that objective away actually makes his item build look really nasty, because if he has BKB there, he's fine. He gets to TP out. There's no Basher on the Wraith King, but instead you give up a really important death because, again, this is all time where they don't have Glyph. Any play is going to get something out of your opponents here. And chilling bottom, well...
Vibe blinks forward, sets it up with a stun into the Hex. Mr. Jeans is there for the damage. And that is going to push them back. Tier 2 tower's already been taken, but maybe D2 Hustlers look for the high ground push. They can at least take the outpost. There we go. Estivai is going to head on over, take control of that. So, I don't know. You look at the vision game right now. You look at what Team have set up. They are getting pushed back so significantly as Sammy. You don't want to be there. Going to get himself jumped in on. There's that Rolling Thunder coming through. Can they force him away? Yes, they can. Able to time walk it away. But now he goes back in. He was looking for the Chrono. He's going to get stunned up. Hex now as well. He's dead a second time. No buyback available for Sammy. And, well, just trying to do too much, I think. He gets away the first time and immediately says, okay, boys, maybe we can turn this. But the second he turns and looks for that Chrono, he's locked down again. And it just completely annihilates Team's momentum here. They have no rhythm to go for really much of anything unless Hustlers just straight up charge at them, which I don't think they're doing right now.
Yeah, unfortunately, I think he thought that Divine had already committed the majority of his spells there. He even disjointed the finger. It didn't even latch, and then he returned the damage. But he just gets Earth Spiked into Hex, and of course they're going to make that jump, and it's not like you have an Aghanim Scepter up on Flea. They tried to save him the second time, but it was just already way too spent at that point, and this is where, unlucky for Mr. Jeans. Lost his Aeon Disc to the Snapfire Cookie, and okay, Yuma?
Only thing is, you're going to need to get through him multiple times, because that was just the Aegis, which was about 10 seconds away from expiring, but you see the splitters. They are stacked up quite nicely, but Yuma going to be able to outrun him, but he can't outrun that. Fiend's Grip comes in, Brax pushes forward, BKB active, they get the spear stun down. That's going to be the second life now taken away from Yuma, but Yodomi running interference on the backline, but there's that Chrono coming in from Sammy, locking down Yuma. Devi's going to be taken down as well. And, well, that honestly kind of serves D2 Hustlers right to a certain extent, because that was unbelievably greedy. Mr. Jeans really had already been sort of bailing out. Monster had pretty much done the same. So you're sitting with Yuma there with maybe one support to back him up against the entirety of Team's lineup, and they do get sort of punished for being that spread out.
Yeah, and the silver lining you could say for D2 Hustlers is they did stick around long enough for Sammy Boy to actually commit the Chrono, so they've got this 100-second timing where they will be able to run at their opponents again, but this is a lot of time. This is where Team get to encapsulate pretty much the entirety of the map. They get to take back at least one of the outposts. They get to sit on their opponent's high grounds. And with BKB now finished on Sammy Boy, you can't afford any more sloppy engagements from D2 Hustlers. They either get him or they don't. And Brax,
looking for it. Finger of Death comes in.
3 seconds. They need to stun him.
BKB comes out. Do they have the damage? Yes, they do. Okay. That got close. Brax very nearly makes it away, but they will pick him off. And the thing is, with Brax dying there, the Glyph comes out top, and D2 Hustlers are going to look to hold this. Hidomi comes in. There's going to be the Rolling Thunder into that jump in from Monster, but Leshrac, yeah. Ryoya doesn't want any of that. He's going to just TP away, and actually everyone from Team TP'd out of that. That's very nicely done on their part. No casualties. They don't get the tower, but the Glyph is used, and outside of Brax dying in the bottom lane, there were no further casualties there. So it's an orderly retreat, but the fact still remains they didn't get the objective they wanted.
Yeah, and that's where this game does start to get a little bit scary from D2 Hustlers. The next Roche is going to be all important. They need to be very cautious. If they end up winning that fight on D2 Hustlers, I can only imagine that you give that Aegis finally over to Mr. Jeans. That guaranteed push does start to come forward, and you have a lot of room to grow on everyone on the D2 Hustlers side. All of your items scale so well into that early late game, where Team, they're not too shabby on their own side. Of course, you are Faceless Void. You are arguably the best carry in the late game, but you're just not finding your items, I think, as fast as some of these other heroes, and you're having to go back for a few items. You don't really have a lot of attack speed right now, so you might want to finish off this Daedalus, but that's where they're trying to make this plays. If Roche respawns in the next 9 seconds, that'd be ideal for Team to actually get something off of this smoke, but you already see how hesitant Sammy Boy specifically is to walk up to those high grounds. They want to kill a hero showing on the mid wave, but Hustlers, yeah, they're going to do a play of their own.
Yeah. Smoke on smoke here as they're both making their way towards that pit. We'll see who ends up popping first. There it is, the jump in. They've got Sammy. Can they lock him down? Staff gets him away for now. Sammy Boy pops the BKB. Now he's looking for the Chrono. Hasn't deployed it yet, though, as he'll take Divine Llama down first. And there it is. Chrono deployed, catching onto two. Ryoya's in for the damage. Monster, though, does throw down the ult, but the second he lands, it's actually hit by the Fiend's Grip. That's going to sort of break up that rhythm a little bit, but Monster is still fighting his way through this. Yuma, though, back up after his first life, but he is surrounded by enemies. Mr. Jeans is going to try to life drain into him, but it's just not going to do enough. He's got to blink himself away before Sammy can close the gap with that time lock, but he's still going. There's going to be the jump in. Mr. Jeans does turn around for the decrep, though. That's going to keep Sammy at arm's length, but D2 Hustlers not able to make it happen. They needed to be able to get onto Sammy Boy there faster, but it's a nice force staff coming out from the supports, keeping him alive long enough for the BKB, and that just turns the whole fight around, and now they're into the pit on the team side.
Yeah, and it's the Glimmer Cape force staff coming out from Flea and IX Mike. Really nice support play, as well as them just trying to stay alive as long as possible. But if you don't chain stun these heroes, the margin for error is 0. If you do that again on D2 Hustler's side, I genuinely think that Team are going to start to look at your buildings. You almost have 25 on the Leshrac. Sammy Boy is also a really high level after those kills and already purchased a shard of his own, but you need to now really be scared of this Faceless Void. I think Flea might be caught top, but you need to be so cautious of these chrono timings now. You really need to start forcing your opponents around the map, and Yudomi, a little bit crazy, but no punish.
Yeah, Mike didn't quite have the Fiend's Grip back up. If he did, they might have just been able to turn that one around, but Yudomi gonna be okay. You see he's got the Lotus Orb now for himself on that Pangolier, so, well, maybe you can reflect something from the Bane, just sort of shut that down right away. If Mike takes himself out of the fight accidentally, then a lot of the setup becomes quite a bit more complicated. We've been talking about Sammy getting sort of forced and glimmered and popping the BKB, but a lot of these fights also comes down to Mike, even for a half or a third of the duration, getting the Fiend's Grip onto some key targets there just to keep them out of that fight for that little bit of extra time. So the Bane is maybe not the end-all be-all for Team, but the fact that he's able to provide even that slight distraction is part of the reason why Team have been able to turn the last couple of fights around. And if you're Team, you might want to start trying to key in onto him a little bit more. Obviously, you can't go entirely onto the Bane, but a quick pick-up onto him opens up a lot of opportunities. But as of right now, you see Divide, he's eyeing up the middle lane, misses with the stun, and yeah, that's a very fast frog. With the haste rune, Sammy just didn't have much to worry about.
Yeah, they're trying to be as obnoxious as possible. They don't want to allow this Faceless Void to push in this tower, especially because Team are already majorly set up in that top lane. If Ryoya really wanted to, he can just start edicting it down, because again, you're 25 on Leshrac. You are going to be able to make these plays more or less for free, and your opponents can't afford to glyph. If they glyph, they have to always respect your hero. And unfortunately for D2 Hustlers, they push a lot slower than this Diabolic Edict. And yeah, they have to respect him. They're even going to aggressively, okay, they're staying here. They're looking for a
Sammy
fight.
going in. Decrep's going to sort of put a stop to that for now, but continues to hack away once it wears off. And the D2 Hustlers, yeah, at this point, you see the TPs coming in now. They realize we can't just sort of let this go. They're going to pop the glyph again, but without any sort of fight to back this up, that glyph is obviously not wasted. It keeps the tower alive for the time being, but okay, maybe it doesn't even do that. Sammy's going back in for it. Tier 3 tower dropping low. Hex comes through, but the tower is still falling, but Sammy's falling as well. That Finger of Death very nearly finishes him off, but even if they get him, it's only one life. The Aegis would have brought him right back up, so Sammy collects himself, goes back in, gets the tier 3, and then backs off. So if you're team, that was pretty much perfect. You push things out, you bring a stop to the push down bot, you force everyone to TP back, you don't lose anything, and you took the tower and the glyph.
Yeah, and you easily push out that bottom wave. You see Yuma trying to make a rotation down there as well. But that's where every single time you force your opponents back into their base, that's 400 gold out of their pockets and pretty much the entire map in yours. And that's where, you know, this Aegis isn't the most aggressively used. Hopefully, almost caught Divine mid. That would have been free. Ooh. But it's just all this time. Okay.
Okay. Aegis burned. Nice play there. Team sort of caught on the back foot trying to get away, but Devi is going to get jumped in on that Lotus Orb. Is actually a little bit mistimed. Oh. Now the Chrono connecting. They've got Monster trapped inside of it as he unfortunately Solar Guardianed himself directly into that Chrono. So he is dead. Devi goes down as well. Yudomi is trying to make a break for it, but the Spear from Brax will be enough to finish him off. And it was a nice play initially. You burn the Aegis, but at that point, if you're D2 Hustlers, I think that's the full extent of that play. Burn the Aegis and fall back. They stick around a little bit too long, and they do get punished pretty heavily for it. 3 dead, and Tier 2 tower will be taken.
Yeah, they try to do the play they've been doing the entire game. They lead with Yudomi into the Dawnbreaker ulti. Unfortunately, Sammy Boy is able to weasel himself out, and okay.
But there's that save again. Flea with the Force Staff and the Cookie, keeping his buddy alive, and now they're going to turn around. They've got the Spear Stun onto Devi. He actually just bought back. He really cannot afford to die again, trying to fight his way through this with Mr. Gene's healing him up, but there's only so much he can do. Ryoya gets the kill. Devi Lama is dead, and this is not looking like really a tenable position for D2 Hustlers. Yuma is just toggling his armlet right now, so he's got to get back to the base to heal, and well, Team not looking to get too greedy here. I think they could have gotten away with maybe a little bit of a push, but they're going to play it safe and back off.
Yeah, there's just no reason for them to take those risks. They know that they've got a full Satanic that Sammy Boy can finish up. Ryoya can slot out this Hood of Defiance if he wants to, or could finish it into an Eternal Shroud. And with their opponents still stuck on their high ground, more or less, you get this free bottom wave, which is massive. Nobody on the D2 Hustler side is able to get that split push play going for them. And even though for a second there, Yuma looks pretty scary with this Nullifier, Flea has just been so on point, and, well, okay.
Gonna punish him here, though. Okay. Mr. Genes will be the one to get the kill, and that Nullifier from Yuma helping him sort of have a little bit of extra damage for that pick play, but at the end of the day, that is still just Flea. They need to find some more valuable targets than that to really sort of move the needle with any sort of comeback effort, but we shall see. Sammy Boy, he's got himself the Ninja Gear, so he's got that solo smoke. He's looking for someone. Chronosphere and DD Rune could get him onto a target. He is starting to move his way top. Monster is alone. He's going to go for no Chrono yet. The Dilation will come first. That's going to force out the BKB. So Monster does get away, but if you're Sammy, maybe you get the kill with the DD inside of the Chronosphere. But once you commit that Chrono, then a lot of your sort of threat to push further forward has already been used. So looking for the longer term gain at this point, they're trying to get back onto that high ground, and holding the Chrono puts him in a better position for that.
Yeah, and if there's one thing to be said, it's just Sammy Boy valuing his Chronosphere much more than the BKB on the Dawnbreaker. And here we go. Here's the push.
Look at how deep the Faceless Void is right now. He wants someone to come defend this, so he can just jump right in. And Yuma, He is pushing his way forward, and now Yodomi blinking forward, turning around as best as he can there as he gets a couple of hits onto Ryoya, but there's just not enough damage. They're going to clear out the creep wave first, but just see the Faceless Void in the tree line waiting for his moment. There's going to be the... Oh, God. The spin-out play onto the Mars, but Sammy's able to bail it out with the Chronosphere. Kiss is now coming through. Divine Llama will be taken down. They get Brax in exchange, though, and Sammy... I want to be a little bit careful. He's going to Time Walk up some of that damage, but now the Nullifier and the Stun will both be applied. Dropping low, but another Time Walk will keep him safe. He actually reverse Time Walks back in onto Yuma, and they're going to be able to burn through his reincarnation. But Yuma still wants to go. He's going to blink his way forward, looking to get onto Mike. They do lock him down. That's going to be one kill for them, but they need so much more. Yodomi is looking for his opening with that Rolling Thunder, but... not really going to have it there. But, I mean, Brax is dead. They take down the Bane, but they lose the entire top lane of Rax in the process, and it just feels like their defenses are getting kind of chipped away at bit by bit.
Yeah, and it was a really risky, almost for no reason, gobble up there. I don't think you need to spit the Mars onto those heroes. I think his own blink would suffice, and then Brax gets his BKB off. He gets to survive after the fact. Instead, he just gets Dagoned in the Chronosphere because of his teammate. It's a mildly unfortunate situation, but that's where this Nullifier on Yuma, it's so important for everyone else except for the Faceless Void. They need Divine Llama to stay alive for a very long time in these fights. Otherwise, there's no lockdown for this Faceless Void after BKB, even though that's when he really is at his weakest. If Divine keeps going down early, with the way that this Wraith King is itemized, there's no Blink Abyssal. There is no, I'm going to get lucky on first hit bash and then chain you to death. You really aren't playing around that aspect of your hero at all. Not even any silences being built up by anyone, where you don't really have anyone who goes for that Orchid towards Bloodthorn. So that's where this Faceless Void just feels so safe with every decision he decides to make, even if they are a little bit crazy and a little bit far forward. And cool Brax.
Quick jump in onto Divide. They take him down. Now, what else can they get? Trying to push their way forward. Chrono's not up for 15, though, but they are directly onto Yuma, who is losing HP rapidly. They are going to be able to take him down once. Ryoya and Sammy trying to set up again. Yuma stunned up. Silver Edge, though, is going to give him that invis, so he is going to be able to sneak away. The problem is his teammates are kind of stuck in the middle of it elsewhere on the map. You see Yodomi going to get tracked down by about 2 or 3, trying to use that roll-up to keep himself safe, and actually, well, he was able to get away for just a moment or two, but he should still be stunned up. Yeah, and finished off. So he tried. It was a nifty play there to buy some time, but it's not enough to save him. However, you do get some of those other heroes out of the line of fire. The problem is, Pango's dead for 100 seconds, and...
Yep. Roche is right there.
Yep.
Even at a fraction of my best.
So,
yeah.
Aegis Cheese and the Refresher Shard all coming into play here for Team Team if they can get this, and D2 Hustlers with dead heroes and the other ones TPing away from the fight, there's no resistance here. They can't really do anything to stop it.
Nope, and this is a big one. Of course, you would have loved to see the Aghanim Scepter for Sammy Boy in this situation, but you'll never pass up a refresher in this type of game. You're actually struggling to figure out who actually wants to take that Aegis. Now you've got it on the Pony, who can do exactly what he was doing before, except with absolute safety. There's really not that much gas in the tank for D2 Hustlers. They still don't even have Yodomi for another 50 seconds if they really want to start pushing onto that high ground a little bit sooner. And now you have double chrono. If you really wanted to, you could save your chrono and then look for that next life. Even a nice double spit.
Sammy
Yep.
wants
Okay.
in. Yep. Chronosphere into Kisses. They take down Divide. They're going to burn their way through Mr. Jeans. Neither one of them have buyback. In fact, no one has buyback on the side of D2 Hustlers. So that just broke the game open, really. And Sammy, he's got another chrono. He already ate that shard. So anyone who comes forward now to try and put together any kind of defense is immediately in danger of getting jumped in on again, and if they lose someone like Yuma or Monster here, then it is just straight up over. Although at this point, it may be over anyway. Team realizing no one's buying back. Let's just go in. They're going to look for it. The spit up gets Sammy Boy into the fight, not using that chrono just yet. He wants to hold it for as long as he can, and he is going to be able to hold it for quite a bit longer. Yuma and Monster have to fall back to the fountain, so Tier 4's still under attack. They burned through one already. The second one's going down, so honestly, if you're D2 Hustlers, you got to go. You're starting to run out of time. They will make their play in as Yudomi is going to connect. They get the stun down onto Sammy as well, but they don't have the follow-up damage. Yuma just can't bring him down in time. Sammy Boy time walks off the damage. Monster will be finished off. And, well, Devi is able to buy back. He's rejoining the fight. Finger of Death is at the ready, but they need Sammy low enough where that would actually kill, and that just straight up doesn't happen. Mike locks down Devi with that Fiend's Grip, and that's it. The GG will be called, and Team will take the first game of this series.
Yeah, it felt like they were really easily able to walk into this late game. I think D2 Hustlers, they ran out of resources, they ran out of options. As soon as that second Roche fell into Team's hands, it really felt like they were in the driver's seat. It felt like they were able to take the majority of the map at that point. You get to play so much more aggressively with your heroes once that Aegis is actually in your hands. And I think Ryoya, really MVP here. He pushed in so many waves. He was able to do so much in a lot of these team fights by just staying alive as long as possible. I think he's really the one that kept them guessing, where D2 Hustlers, they had their moment where maybe you can push onto the enemy team's high ground. Maybe you can try to play for this earlier timing, but it always felt like Team were getting a little bit more out of the map efficiency wise. I don't think there was ever a chance maybe after that early game to end up killing Ryoya. He didn't die for 25 minutes after his third death. I think he was just a little too solid. There just weren't many chinks in the armor there for Team where D2 Hustlers, the few times that they maybe mechanically misplayed where they weren't able to find that chain burst, and you could say that that's just fantastic support play from both Flea and IX Mike with the Nightmares and the Force Staffs, but it's just an unfortunate circumstance for D2 Hustlers because you weren't able to finish off those kills. You played such a high mechanical skill lineup, and unfortunately, you drop the ball once or twice, and that's all it takes when you play versus Void.
Yeah, just you give him that little bit of room, and then Sammy Boy just blows it open, and just kind of goes to show that is really exemplified by the stat lines we see here. Sammy 6-4 on 14. That's not a massive sort of running away with it kind of overall score for him, but it doesn't matter. He can die a couple of times early. He doesn't need to get the kills directly himself. He just needs to set it up. Whereas for D2 Hustlers, you look at them, their death count's relatively low, at least on the cores. Only one for Mr. Jeans at 10, 1, and 10, but that doesn't matter. Team just needed the control of the fights. The efficiency was never necessarily what was going to be the limiting factor for them. So Team able to get themselves the win in game one with, honestly, a strategy that we all kind of saw coming the second they pick it up. You know, that Snapfire Faceless Void, you know what they're going to do to you. It's just you can't necessarily stop it.
Yeah, and I think now if you're D2 Hustlers, just look at the relative strength of your heroes. I think that the Pugna was an interesting pickup, but I also feel like at the end of the day, it's new, it's cool, great. What else? What can you actually do when your opponents don't play versus you? Because I feel like for the majority of this game, Team didn't play versus D2 Hustlers, and D2 Hustlers didn't have the tools to actually push that envelope forward. It's just kind of an unfortunate game. Even Monster, who gets to play off lane Dawnbreaker, he goes for and itemizes for damage, and then he dies twice, and then suddenly his game is so much more difficult as well. I think it's just some small misplays, and I think D2 Hustlers can definitely give us a nice game here in game two.
Yeah, they can definitely short things up. So we'll see what adjustments they make, if they maybe switch it up a little bit lineup-wise for that second game. But said game will be coming up in just a couple of minutes here. One more between Team and D2 Hustlers. So we'll see if Team can get the 2-0 sweep, or if D2 Hustlers are going to be able to get another 1-1 draw here today. So we'll be stepping away for just a few moments here, but when we return, it will be that second game of our third series. So stick around, and we'll be right back.